So I will open up InDesign. And that will come up momentarily. And I guess while we're waiting for this to come up, I'll start talking. I might as well start talking about color. I showed you the PMS book, and you got a chance to look at the things that printers use when they're examining different kinds of color. But I will be willing to bet that most of you learned about color originally from this. Did you see what it was? How many people here recognized it? Yeah. Did you see it? Now you know what it is? What is it? Box of Crayola crayons. Yeah, these are the first colors that you learn the names of the colors and match them to the crayons. And I think that for most American kids, this was their main introduction to color. This is how we learned about color. So I'm going to give you a chance. You're allowed to take notes in my class, but I'm going to let you take notes with Crayola crayons today. Okay? What I'd really like to do is I'd like to see if the colors that you use today match the way you remember them. Okay? If the colors that you see today, does the red look the same as the red did when you were a kid? Do the other colors look the same as they did? Yes, those ones. And let's see if your color memory has helped you remember these different colors. All right, if I don't have enough crayons, that's okay. Okay, well, InDesign is still taking its own sweet time, so while we're waiting for InDesign to come up, I will show you a color wheel. This is the kind of thing that designers use to determine different colors. And you can see we have the primary colors, we have red, yellow, and blue, and then we have secondary colors, green, orange, and purple, and then between those we have tertiary colors. And there are all different mixes of these that you can use when you're making up a color palette. Let's see if InDesign has finally decided to come alive here, and it is still taking its own sweet time. All right, that's okay. I got plenty to talk about. Okay, this is a book about color. There's a whole book in here about choosing different colors. And I'll pass this around and you folks can look at this. And this is Jan White, the fellow who wrote the other book that I showed you about document design. Same guy. All right, so I'm going to File, Open, and I need to go to my computer. I'm going to go back to the brochure that I used before. I think this will be okay. Here's another one. It's a different brochure, but this one should work. No? Didn't find it in there, huh? Nope. Okay. Okay, so this thing, the type kit, this is a way of getting you to buy fonts from Adobe if you don't have them. If you click on any of these things, it's going to take you to the Adobe site and offer you a spectacular bargain on fonts. Now, how many people here have downloaded fonts from somewhere on the internet at some point? Okay, you take a chance when you do that. Some of these sites are okay, some of them are kind of shady. I think that in the student handbook and on the Moodle page, I put some more reputable sites. But you have to understand that in many cases, these are not professional designers. And if you get 26 caps and 26 lowercase and 10 numerals and punctuation, you're doing okay. If you really want a whole set, then you're probably going to have to pay. If you have paid for Windows, if you're using Microsoft products, you can download extra fonts from the Windows website. Microsoft will give you more. If you're using the Adobe products, they will allow you to download some of those. And if you use Google Drive, Google also has a bunch of typefaces that you can download. And those are all fairly reputable. They probably won't crash your computer, and they probably don't have viruses and other bad things. But otherwise, if you're not willing to pay for them, then you're kind of stuck with the original set and whatever you can look for online. So you do the very best that you can in these things. So I think what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to go down to Preferences, Interface. See, when you have your own version, you don't have to worry about this stuff. It's all quite readable just the way you have it. And I'm going to set up the brochure again. We did this once before, but I want to show you some new things that I didn't get to show you last time. I think what I'll do is I'll start by copying a bunch of text. Okay, I'm just going to take this bit of text over here, and there are lots of different ways of copying. Of course, you can copy with the Control C if you remember that, or you can use anything else. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put in a let's see. I'm going to put it on the back cover. So I've got these text boxes already lined up where I want them to go. I'm going to take my text and I'm going to put it inside the back cover. And I'm just going to paste. And my text is in there. And you can see it's pink. That means that InDesign can't find this font. For some reason, InDesign is not able to find Times. Now, I can look for it here. I can also go here under Type. Okay, and I can go over here where it says Find Font. And that's the same thing that you had before. The same thing that came up before. And it'll tell me it can't find Times and it can't find Zaf Dingbats. So I can look for Times, I can go over here, and I can scroll down until I get to Times New Roman. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute Times New Roman for Times, and I'm simply telling the computer, change everything that was Times to Times New Roman. All right. So I can click on that. If I'm not really sure where the problem is, I can come over here and click Find First, and it'll find the first example in the document of the Times font that it can't locate. So it'll search for me. Sometimes it happens you import something from another document, and they use the different typeface in there, and your computer doesn't recognize it. It could be something as small as a space, or a numeral, or some other object that you don't know what it is. There's no style. Since I'm not using any styles here, I don't have to worry about changing the style. If I had a style that used Times New Roman, then or used Times, I would want to redefine it so the style now said Times New Roman. So I'm going to change everything there, and it's done. And now you should see that it's no longer pink. All right. So that's how you do that. You can do whatever you like with this. We'll pull down a couple of windows over here. We're going to use the We're going to change workspace to typography because that's what we're working with. We've got a lot of type, so we're going to use this. We'll start by looking at individual characters in here. And I'm just going to grab a hold of this tab and I'm going to yank it up here so that you can see it way up high on screen. And it's very clear now. This is all Times New Roman. It's regular. My choices are regular, italic, bold, or bold italic. That's all. This is a very simple typeface. It doesn't have a lot of the, I think I showed you some of the others that have a lot more options, right? The ones that are called Pro. This one only has these 4. The type size I'm using is 12. That's the default. If I make it larger, the line spacing, this is the line spacing over here. See, it's 12 on 14.4. Remember I told you that typographers traditionally use 120%? So this will automatically calculate 120%. And I can prove it by going to 10, and it's going to be 10 on 12. And you can do that even without a calculator, right? You know that that's 120%. If I make it larger, if I decide that I want it to be 14 points, it'll go up to 16.8. And I can come down here, I can select one of the defaults, or if I choose, I can change it by just clicking on one of these down arrows or up arrows. So 14 on 15 looks awfully tight, right? It looks a little better if you add a line spacing to it. So that's how you can control the line spacing when you're working with characters. Okay, you're working with a character set, and you can see up here I've got the character selected, so that's how I know what I'm doing. The same changes I'm making over here I could make up here. You can do them in 2 different places. As a matter of fact, you can do them in 3 different places, but I'm not going to tell you about the third one. It would just confuse you. So all you need to know is that you can change it by pulling down the character menu, or this is called the character control bar, or character control panel, the one that runs across the top. Now, the kerning for this thing, now I have to zoom in. And there are lots of ways of zooming in. You can go up to the top, you can go over here, and you can grab a hold of a little magnifying glass, and that'll zoom for you. Or you can go up to the top here, and tell it you want to go into 125% or more. I'm going to actually go to 150 because I want you to actually watch what happens as I start changing these things. All right? So I'm just going to select 3 lines of text over here. And metric kerning is the default. Metric kerning takes whatever the type designer chose and applies it. Okay? If you want to do anything else, you have to change it from metric to something else. In this case, you can change it to optical kerning. Did you see a difference? I'm going to go back, watch what happens. Slight, very, very slight difference, right? Not a lot of difference there. But what happens, look, take a look over here. You see between the C and the A? There's a lot of space in there. So when you're kerning, you're really working with pairs. Pairs of characters, not whole blocks of text. So I turned the optical kerning on, but in this particular case, look what's happened over here. The computer has decided that -3 is what it should be. I don't have to accept that if I don't want to. I can make it tighter than that. Now you're saying, Professor Zwickler, you're clicking away like crazy and nothing is happening. The reason is that every click moves, contracts the different distance between those 2 characters by 1/10,000th of an M. An M is equivalent to the point size. So 6-point type has 6 M's. So that's a very, very, very tiny adjustment. Very tiny adjustment. But you can see over here how I've changed it. I can go back to metric, and it'll be 0. I can go to optical, and the optical setting was -3. Now let's say I decide that I really want the whole word to be tightened up. Then I go over here. This is tracking. So on the left-hand side is kerning. On the right-hand side is tracking. And there are defaults over here, and I can click on any one of these, and you could see, did you see it happen? I'll go back to 0. You can watch what happens to it. -10, -20. And what I've discovered is that most of the type that I use looks best at about -20. And the reason why the original type designer sets it so loose is because most of the printers in the world are not calibrated. The printer, people set it up, they turn it on, they start printing. and where it prints is really kind of random. Within certain parameters, it's not terribly precise. If you were to go to a print shop where they were creating proofs that they were actually going to be using for creating a printed document, they would have calibrated both the computer and the screen, the display. So the colors would be perfect, the distances would be perfect, and then again remember that we're dealing with a certain number of dots up here that may not actually be visible when you start printing on a piece of paper. Okay, so it's going to be quite different. And that's why they set them so loose. But we can tighten them up, we can make them as tight as we want. If I'm really not happy with the way this looks, I can actually select the two of them and use tracking to tighten them up even more if I want. Okay, now that looks kind of dumb, right? Probably wouldn't want to do that. So I can go back here, I can set it at -10, and then once you've got it at -10, every click down will increase it by another 10. So 20, 30, 40, okay? The further you go, the more you distort the type. So going beyond 30 or 40, you're really going to wind up with distortion, and you don't want to do that at all. Okay? So that's how you use the tracking. That's how you use that. Generally speaking, when I create something like this, I would probably simply select all and change everything here to optical and change everything here to -20, and that's how I would leave it. That's pretty much all I would do. There are some cases where I might want to do something that's a little more exciting, a little more interesting. For example, I can lower the baseline. Now the baseline is what all these characters sit on. And you simply go over here, you can see the baseline. Wait, which one is it? It's this one here. I can lower the baseline and you can see the letter moving down. And that makes it kind of a funky looking letter. You could do that if you wanted to, make something look kind of strange. This is going to come up when you design the logo. One of the assignments here is to design a logo, and you may want to move letters up and down. There's no reason why the letters in a logo have to sit on the same line. So you can move them up and down, and this is how you do it, this one over here. All right? These over here, these are distortions. With either of these, it will distort the letters. This one will make it a lot fatter, and it will. People will lose the sense of what typeface it comes from, because it's just going to look very, very strange. But I have discovered that there are times when it's not such a terrible thing. Whoops, 24%. Look at how skinny that is. Well, there's your new weight loss program, folks. Just hit the button. Okay. I have discovered that if you go down 96%, nobody's going to notice. You go up to 103, 104%, nobody's going to notice. Anything more than that, and it's going to start to look weird. So you want to be very careful about that. What else can I show you under character here? I guess the other part is over here under options. This is what you can do with OpenType. You can turn on the OpenType options just the way we did in Word. So if you want the swash characters, if you want different stylistic sets, you can put those in. You can also do a whole bunch of different things with the numbers. So you can have tabular lining, which means all the characters line up straight on top of one another. Proportional, old style. Let me type out a bunch of numbers so you can see what we're talking about here. Okay, so here's the line of numbers. I'm going to take that, I'll go under character, and you'll get to see under OpenType. Whoops, you can't see it if I move it over that way. Come on, give me a break. All right, I got to move it someplace where it's not going to get in the way. Let's see if I can move it over here. All right, type selected. Kick this over here. Oh, I just closed it. Great. If it happens, it's over. I know where it's hiding. It's under type and tables. Okay, so open type. Here we go. All right, so let's try proportional old style. You see any change? No? Okay. Proportional lining. See any change? No? Tabular old. I don't think any of these are going to work because this is Times New Roman and I don't think it has any of these features. and that's why it's not working. If I picked a different typeface, you would see there'd be changes to it. Okay, so this is the character menu. The short version is just the word character. If you want to see more, you have to click over here, and this will give you the name of the typeface and what kind. And then for the adjustments, you click it again, and you can see the rest of the adjustments. Now, if you're using a foreign language, you can tell the computer that you're typing in a foreign language, and it will add in the other characters that you need to type in that foreign language. Okay? So that's the other advantage of character. Let me see if there's anything else under character I want to show you. Okay, I guess I should show you underlining. So we'll take the word squad, and we'll go under underline, and that's the default underline. And you can see it does exactly the same thing that ridiculous nonsense in Word does. It cuts off the descender. It's the same as clicking this button up on top here, and that's why you probably don't want to do that. What you need to do instead is to go under paragraph, and then over here, paragraph rules. And I don't know if you can just do this under one word, but we'll try it. Rule below, I'll turn it on, preview, and I just want it under the text. Nope, it's not going to select the one word I want. Nope, never mind. Okay, so what I'll have to do here is I'll have to actually come and draw the line. I come over here and grab the line tool and then underline by hand. And I can make it as thick or as thin as I want by coming here under stroke. And the default is going to be 1 point, which is kind of heavy for an underline. Usually a half point will do it. All right? If you're a nut, you could do wavy or some other bizarre way of doing it. Then you have to increase. If you want to see the full effect, you have to go. Look at that sine curve. Wow. Is that cool or what? Yeah, I'm watching the engineers. They start drooling whenever I say sine curve. All right. I know you guys. Yeah, I know you guys. All right. Character. Let's see paragraph. How am I doing on time here? All right, I'm getting there. So when you're done with it, you can close it up and stick it back over here on the side if you want to. Usually I put character right next to character styles so they're together, and I put paragraph next to paragraph styles. So here's a paragraph. I have to have the T tool selected. And this is my paragraph, right? So I can come under paragraph and I can change various things. I can change the alignment, centered, right, okay. Justify with the last line to the left, justify with the last line in the center, justify with the last line at the right, justify the heck out of the whole thing. And you can see what happens to the letter spacing when you use justify without making any other changes. All right. These two over here, justify towards the spine and away from the spine, it's not going to really affect you guys too much, so don't worry too much about it. Indent. So you've got a whole bunch of indents. This one over here indents from the left, this one indents from the right. And you'll see the same are up at the top here when I click on the paragraph button. I've got the same ones up here that I have down here. So there are two different places I can do the same thing. Actually, there are three, but I'm not going to tell you about the third one. All right. Now, other stuff that you need to know. This one over here, this is the first line indent. So if you're doing a paragraph and you want to indent the first word of the paragraph because you're using an indented style, you can do it. And what will happen then is that any place you start a new paragraph that is attached to this paragraph will also have the same indent in the same way. They'll all follow the same pattern. If you plan on doing a longer document, and this is the way you're going to do it, you need to take this and convert it into a paragraph style so that you can apply that style wherever you plan to use it. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to create a paragraph style, and I click on the paragraph style button, and because this is a new style, I'm going to go over here. The page that's got the corner turned, I'm just going to click on that, and I'll have a new paragraph style. And the name that InDesign gives it is Paragraph Style 1, which is not terribly helpful, unless you've only got one or two different styles. Sometimes, if all I have is heads and body text, I'll go with 1 and 2. Then I have to remember which one is the head and which one's the body text. But in this case, I'm going to give it a little fancier name. I'm going to call it indented. All right? And the basic formatting is the second button down. The first one at the top is just tells you if it's based on another style. And sometimes you want to keep these together. So for example, if this were a head and I wanted to make sure that the very next paragraph, whatever follows, is in the style of first paragraph, whatever that might be, I might make sure over here that InDesign knows that there's a name and it's supposed to follow this paragraph. Okay? Are you following this? It'll be clearer as I move along with this. The next one over here, basic character formats, Times New Roman, that's the typeface that I've chosen, but I don't like that very much. I'm going to go to Lucida Bright. Much nicer. 14 is ridiculous size for a typeface. And if I go to the default, it's 14.4. I'm going to add a little extra leading. I'm going to make it 15. Hello, 15. Optical kerning, tracking -20. Now, case, if I wanted the whole paragraph to be small caps or all caps, for example, if you were making a head or something special, you might want to click on one of these. It's entirely up to you. And then position is going to be normal. I'm not going to bother with that. Indents and spacing. Well, I've already set up an indent. I indented it 1 pico, 1 point. I'm going to take it in a little bit more than that. There's no space before the paragraph, no space after the paragraph, no other indents or anything. The color is going to be good old-fashioned black, and I can select that over here. I can turn on the open type features if there were any. They might be useful, but I don't know. And then I'm going to click OK. And now this paragraph is called indented. And I can go to the first paragraph over here, and just by clicking on the word indented, it's going to apply the style to that typeface, to that paragraph. Did you see it? Okay. Now, it's got a little plus sign over here. And the plus sign means that there's something bizarre about this type. And you see what it is over here? The C that's hanging down. If I want to get rid of that, I can click over here. This will clear any of the changes that I made that are outside the style. So that will go away. And now that turns to gray, and now this is just the way I want it to be. If this were the opening paragraph, however, of a document, I would probably want to set this to 0. All right, without any indent. And I might decide that I want to have a drop cap, because I'm a big drop cap fan. I suddenly became a very big drop cap fan. All right, so now I've got a new style, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click over here. This is going to be paragraph style 1, and I'm simply going to call this first, because that's the first paragraph in the story. So here's the first paragraph. The second paragraph is called indented. Third paragraph is called indented. Next paragraph is called first. Next paragraph is called indented. Looks like I don't have enough space over there, do I? All right, but you get the idea, what I'm able to do with this styles thing. All right, so that's how you create a style. There are a lot of other things I can do with a style. So let's take this one over here. I'm just going to turn this back to the basic paragraph, and I'm just going to call it, I'll go with indented, and I'm going to make some changes. So some of the things that I can do under here, oops, not in there. Well, if I do this, it's going to change everything. All right, we'll change everything. All right, other things I can do. I can set tabs. If I'm making a list or something, I can set tabs, and the way you do it is very simply. You can open up this tabs bar, and let's say that I want to have a tab down here, and I want it to have leader dots. Did I explain to you folks about leader dots? All right. Leader dots, if you don't remember, when you have a table of contents or something like that, and it says introduction, and what page is it on? It's on page 1. These are called leader dots. And you can let InDesign determine how many dots fit in the line. It'll look perfect and beautiful, and you don't have to type periods, which is a stupid way to do it. Okay? So you go over here and you say I want to use periods, and it will automatically create periods related to that tab. So I type some text, and then I hit the tab key, and a line of dots will appear, and then I can type whatever I want. And that's how that works. If you're not a big fan of dots, what else can you use? You can use a plus sign. That's going to look strange. But you could do it if you really wanted to. You could use an equal sign. You can use anything. You can hit all the keys that you want and create leader dots. You want to see how that looks? I'm sure you do. All right? Here we go. Ready? Wasn't that exciting? Is that a big thrill? Okay. So that's how you create those. Back to indented. Other things. Paragraph rules. Okay. If I have a paragraph and I want to put a rule before the paragraph, a line, remember we call rules lines, I can choose above or below. I'm going to go with below. I'm going to turn the rule on. And the default is going to be a 1-point black. Actually, it's the same color as the type. And here's my preview. And there you can see I got lots of these things. Just look at the one at the bottom here, because that's the one that, the other ones will just confuse you. All right? I can make it as thick as I want. I can make it any color that I want. All right? I can make it a tint. If I decide that I'd rather have it be pinkish, I can make it pinkish. All right? And of course, you can also make it any one of these other crazy things. Here's your sine. You want your sine curve again? All right, here's your sine curve again. All right? I can move my sine curve. This is how you do it. You move it up and down. Look at how close that is. That's too close to the bottom of the paragraph. I need to increase it. Click on the offset, and that will move the rule above or below. Okay? This is going to be the width of the column. I could also make it the width of the text, and you see that it only goes as far as the text goes. See? If I go with column, it'll go the entire width of the column. I could also indent it if I wanted to, and this could be a decorative thing that you could do. You could indent it left and right, and then it would be sort of centered, a rule between lines. There are a lot of different things you can do with this thing. All right? Keep options. We talked about keeping stuff together on the same page. This is how you turn on hyphenation. We've talked a lot about hyphenation. Whenever you justify, you really need to turn on hyphenation. I would suggest whenever you're using small quantities of text for a head or for a caption or some other place where you've got a real small amount of text, turn the hyphenation off. You don't really need it there. But whenever you've got a whole document and you're justifying, you want to turn it on. And here it is. It's turned on automatically. The default is on. And words with at least 5 letters, how much space. And you don't have to even read any of this stuff. You can take this puppy over here and swing it back and forth, and it'll make changes, and you can decide how you like it. Okay? Hyphenating capitalized words is usually not a good idea. You're going to wind up turning me into Steve, then, which is very annoying. So you probably don't want to do that. If it becomes a problem, of course, you can turn it on. And then you may decide that you don't want to hyphenate the last word in a paragraph because you're going to wind up with an orphan. So you probably don't want to do something like that. All right, justification, you don't need to know about that. Here's drop caps. There's a whole thing in here that changes the drop caps. It's the same bunch of tools that you have over here. How far you drop them, how far they go down. You can scale how far the descenders go down, a whole bunch of different things over here. Bullets and numbering, this is how you make bullet lists and number lists. So I can say that this style indented is now a bullet list. And I can choose different bullet styles. These are the defaults they give you. If I don't like any of these, I can add my own. But I'm going to have to find a typeface that's got bullets in it. Oh, this one has nice bullets. Hearts. Absolutely. All technical documents should have hearts in them as a bullet. All right? And then over here, it lets you fill it around with the indents. And you'll have to decide, you may not be able to do this in this menu because you can look at how far apart that is. Well, maybe I can fix it. Let's see if I can fix it here. Not just moving the first line over. This is hard to do when I can't move this thing too far. All right, tab position. I'll move the tab position back. Whoops, too far. No? See, the heart is a really huge bullet, so it's kind of lousing up my design here. But you can do this. You can also put certain text after it if you want. This little thing with the caret and the T, that's simply the tab sign. It simply means bullet, tab, and then the text will start over here in the tab position. All right? Character color, I can change the color of my text. I can make all of my text green. And of course, if you make the text green, you want to make sure that the outline of each letter is green. All right, so the text is red, the outline is green. Isn't that wonderful? No, it isn't. It's too thick. It needs to be a lot thinner. We'll just make it 25. Isn't that prettier? Look at that. And there are people out there who design whole documents like this. Don't use this power for evil. Okay, you still with me? Okay. So there's my paragraph style options. Let me see if there's any more stuff down here that you need to know. There is a whole bunch of underlining options that you can fiddle with. You can turn on underlining, and I think that's all I'm gonna stick with over here today. All right, a couple other menus that you should know about. Under Window, under Output, you have something called Preflight. So as you're working on the brochure, and I know you're not going to wait until Thursday morning, right? Okay, as you're working on the brochure, certain things are going to go wrong and you're not going to know what the problem is. InDesign is going to try to help you. And the way it's going to help you is by opening up something called this Preflight menu. All right? Open it up, turn it on, and then just stick it over in a corner somewhere. You can actually put it way down at the bottom. If you do anything wrong, if you have an image that doesn't show up, if you have chose a font that doesn't exist, if you spilled over a bleed, this little panel will light up and tell you there's a problem. It actually also will tell you, there's a way of going on here, I don't have a major problem to show you, but you can actually click on it and it'll tell you where the error is. So watch the little green light. As long as it's green, you're okay. If the light turns red, there's a problem. You need to find out what the problem is. Often it's going to be something called overset text. And I'll show you how that works, okay? I'm going to go down to the bottom of my text box, and I'm going to pull it up over here, and now you're going to see a little red box. Did you see something happen with Preflight? All right, watch the Preflight. Watch this. I pull it down, all the text is fine, right? But if I leave off the last line, beep, 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 it should have a nice sound that goes with it. But if it did, offices all over the country people would be tearing their hair out. So it's enough to be able to see the red light. It's telling you that there's text and the problem is 1 and that it's overset, and if you're still stupid and can't figure out what it is, it'll say, look at the text frame. Dummy, that's where the problem is. Isn't that nice? So that's Preflight. Keep that open. You can stick it in a corner. You just want to be able to see, you just need to be able to see if there's a red light flashing. That's all you really need to see. Okay? Other things about the box that I can show you. I don't know, did I show you the yellow box and what it does? Okay. All right. Now, working within the text box itself, object, text frame options, you got a lot of stuff in here that will help you, no matter how you're trying to design things. If it's linked, all of these will change the same. So I got to click preview, and you'll see that I'm indenting everything now is going in 8 points, 9 points, inside the box. All right? It's aligned to the top of the box. All right? And I can auto size too if I want to. This is a feature that you may want to fiddle around with, but it's really going to change the dimensions of whatever it is you've created. So I'd probably leave it alone, unless you really intend to do that. All right. So I can do that, and then with this terms of fills, I can go here under swatches, and I can fill it with any one of these colors. If I choose to fill up the box, I can do it like that. And then over here under object, I have effects. Now, if anything else helps you flunk out of school, it is learning to use special effects in InDesign and Photoshop, because it's just awesome. All right. You can come over here, and if you click on transparency, it won't not only open up transparency, but it'll open up all these other possible things that you can do. So I'm going to leave transparency. I'm going to add a drop shadow. As long as you've got preview on, you should be able to see. Can you see the shadow over there? Oh, be quiet. I better zoom out, or you won't be able to see all the wonderful things that I can do to this text box over here. Object, effects, drop shadow, and you can see my drop shadow. Don't overdo the drop shadows. You looked at some of those brochures and you saw they put everything in drop shadows. It's crazy. It's too much. You can change the offset, and you can see the lines, the depth of the shadow is changing. If you want to make it spread more, which will thin it out a little bit, you can click on this one. That'll thin it out a little bit. If you want to, noise will create a kind of a crackly effect. Can you see the crackly effect happening there? It's a little hard to see, but that's what that whole thing does over there. All right, get rid of the drop shadow. We don't need that. You can create an inner shadow, and you can create it. You can make it fairly deep. You can turn the whole thing into a pretty big slab of whatever it is you're turning it into, and then you can change the direction that the light is hitting it. A whole bunch of things you can do with that. You can have an outer glow, which is always, I think, very important for everybody to have an outer glow. We'll just pick cyan because what's magenta. And we'll need to make the glow. All right, well, we want to spread that glow. We want a nice big glow. There we go. We're glowing. Can you see how we're glowing now, folks? Look at that. And you can go softer or more precise if you want. Isn't that wonderful? Don't use this power for evil. I'm warning you. I'll come and get you. Guess what inner glow is going to do? All right, I'm not even going to do it. Bevel and emboss actually turns it into more of a 3D object than drop shadow does. It's a much harder shadow. Okay. Satin is a satin-like finish. And feathering. Now, feathering will blend it from a solid hue in the center to transparent at the edges. And they give you several different ways of doing it. Let's see if I can do this one here now. I'll feather it out like that. Isn't that pretty? It can be sharp if you want it. It can be diffused or rounded. I think diffused is the default. And you can add a little bit of noise if you want. And that's not bad. That's an interesting effect. What that will do, if you're trying to make sure that you fold it on this blue line, which is where you really want to fold it, this will blur the edge. So wherever the fold is, it'll look okay. If there's a sharp edge and you want the fold to be right on the sharp edge, Murphy's Law says you're going to miss. So the feathering tool might be helpful. Don't overdo. Don't overdo. I'm deliberately overdoing to show you what these things can do. Okay, there's a directional feather. This actually creates kind of a gradient on this thing. I'm going to feather it from I'll feather it from the bottom. There. So it fades out at the very bottom. It's kind of a gradient going from solid to transparent. Think of it that way. All right? And I can do that with any of the other corners with this thing as well. And this is the true gradient feather going from, in this case it's going from side to side. But again, you got a little spinner over here. You can spin it around. Wait a second. Did I get it? Here's my spinner. I'm waiting for somebody to do this in PowerPoint. Wouldn't that be awesome? That would make people nauseous, don't you think? Okay. All right, so that's all I think I need to show you in terms of this stuff. Okay, did I show you the cooler or color? You have it available to you here, and this is a set of, these are color combinations that people have put together. And this is a great lead-in to my talk about color, because you should know that there are many, many people out there who get paid a lot of money to give us various color combinations. So, for example, if you were to go over to the hardware store and buy some paint for your apartment, you would probably find a collection of these. And what these are combinations of colors that interior designers have put together to show you the most popular colors that people are using today. My son is a house painter, and he's pretty much got this stuff memorized. If somebody comes in and they say they want this color, he'll suggest using these two other colors. These do change over time, and you should know that however you paint your apartment, within 5 years people are going to look in and say, oh, you've been living here since 2015 or so? You'll be able to spot it. It's like many things. These colors tend to come and go. We talked a little bit about fashion colors, but these are combinations. So the big color here is the main color, and then there are two accent colors that go along with that. And I'll pass these around, and you can see how designers make these things up. They come up with colors that work well together. These are tints and shades of colors. Those aren't combinations. This is a bunch of combinations for living rooms. Okay, so you can see that there are all these different combinations for people's living rooms. What Shane's been telling me is that nowadays a lot of people are using black. It hides the dirt. It's more dramatic. And it's perfect for putting up your big screen TV. So black has suddenly become an interior design. If you were to look at, has anybody here ever been to like the Villa Louis or a restored Victorian building? Yeah, what color? Do you remember what colors they used inside?
I want to say it was just like a
Variety of browns. Brown wood paneling was very popular, but very expensive. The Pabst House in Milwaukee, has anybody been there? All right, the rooms are done in very deep colors, much stronger than we're used to. And nowadays people like to have things light and airy. The Victorians didn't like airy. Airy was bad for you. And so they had a lot of heavy draperies. They also didn't have a lot of good heating, and they certainly didn't have air conditioning. So having heavy draperies, and they would pick very dark colors. And that was very typical, very dark colors and sometimes very bright colors. Here's one for family rooms. Pass that one around as well. So you can see, and these coolers, this particular swatch that we've got up here, will show you what some people have come up with in terms of color combinations. So here's one called Friendly Social. All right, and people rate these things, and I don't know if the ratings are worth anything or not. I have no clue. But you can go from random, newest, most popular, saved, custom sets. If you go with the newest, you'll see that there seem to be a lot of browns, the most recent ones. Here's a whole bunch of dark colors. All right, so this is, if you're really stuck and you don't have a clue about color combinations, that's one way of doing it. You can certainly find ways of coming up with the different colors here. Where's my device? Here it is. Okay. Okay, human beings have always loved color. It's always been something that we have really enjoyed a lot. Members of my family love going out this time of year leaf peeping. They just love going to look at the trees changing color. People visit museums because they like colors. If you walk into any elementary school in this or any other country, you'll find loads and loads of color used all over the place because people really like that. As we get older, our tastes become a little more refined. We may not want such big splashy colors. We might like more subtle colors. But human beings have always really relished colors. One of the great stories has to do with the fact that trade between East and West in ancient times was spurred by the fact that if you went to the Levant, you could find colors that you couldn't get in Europe. There was a purple dye that they made along the eastern Mediterranean coast that the Europeans were nuts about. When the first time that Europeans made contact with Asians, with China, and they discovered that the Chinese had all these colored dyes, they went nuts at all these incredible colors. So humans have long had this strong desire to make things in different colors. This is a pigment shop. You can actually go in there and buy these original pigments. If you're into chemistry, you know that these are usually mineral-based, but sometimes they're organic. The advantage of mineral-based is that they tend to fade less over time. Organic materials tend to fade more over time. But going way, way back to Egyptian times, we have examples of them taking stones. For example, you could take cobalt and grind it up and you can get a blue paint. All right? You can take other stones and grind them up. We look at iron and we see gray, black, but iron rusts. And that rust color can actually be used for coloring things. And this is an example of a place where you can mix your own colors. So in printing, we talk about first black and white, which is the simplest, cheapest, easiest way to do things. But if you can add a second color, a spot color. It can be a standard color, one of those that comes right out of the pot. And here's an example of a set of colors from, this is UW Health Services. These are the cans of paint that they have sitting there waiting for you. All right? And then there are specialty colors that you can mix up following the recipes that are in here. 4 colors is used to create real-life images. So black and white, you've got a lot of different options. Humans can distinguish up to 9 different shades of gray. So there are things that you can do. Even if it's just black and white, there are things that you can do. And we always spec it out as a percentage of black. So this is not called 50% gray. This is always called 50% black. K stands for black. B stands for blue. K stands for black. 12% K. All right? If it's a shaded box, it's called a screen tint. And the darker the box, the less contrast you have. If you're using text on a shaded box, you want to make sure that you're probably going to be working down here in the 20 or 10% area. Anything darker than that, the type is not going to show up terribly well. There is a way of trapping. It's a little more technical. It involves a printing technique. You don't need to worry about that. Just try to make sure that there's a lot of contrast between the text and the background. You spec out the amount of shading in the screen tint. Again, it's as a percentage of black. So this is not a gray box. This is a shaded box, 20% black. And that's how you spec it out. So if you tell the printer, I want to put this in a shaded box, that's how you give it to them. A gradient usually goes from 100% to 0. This is a black gradient. Spot color. We talked a little bit about this last week. Adding a second color. So here's an example where I used it for an initial cap, for bullets, for a run-in head, for section and folio number. You can also do, as I showed you with Photoshop last time, 2 and 3 colors. This is a similar list to the one that is going around. From a print shop, you go in there and they say, what color do you want? And you can pull these colors out. These guys are very clever. They put them on top of crayons. They're giving you the Crayola equivalent because they know that a lot of people, that's how they know their colors. So if you go in there and you say you want the you want blue-violet, that's the Crayola equivalent of their violet ink. Okay? So this is an example. This is what happens when you try to do this in PowerPoint. It doesn't look very good. But if using the color wheel in PowerPoint, these are pretty standard colors, several different shades of red. And what happens with the reds is as you go from yellow through the oranges ones, these are considered warm colors. And then they start getting cooler, and these are considered cool colors. So the colors have temperatures as well. People give them temperatures. We talked a little bit about using PMS 200 for Bucky Badger Red. And the way this works is that when you have this printed out in the print shop, they'll take a proof sheet and they put it under a spectrometer, a machine that measures the density of the color and calculates whether or not they have actually matched it the way it's supposed to be matched. It turns out that one of my distant cousins invented that machine, and he's now a very, very rich man, and I wish we were a lot closer. All right. This is the PMS book that I showed you. It's available. You have it here on paper, but you can also access it through any of the Adobe products. Adobe decided it was worth it to have a partnership with Pantone to do this. Microsoft did not. So if you're trying to match colors in Microsoft using Word or PowerPoint, it's much more complicated. All right. The four-color process: cyan, yellow, magenta, and black. Cyan comes from the use of, can you guess what chemical they use to make that blue? Yeah, cyanide. That's what they use. And in the old days when printers first started doing this, guess what happened to them? They would lick their fingers and need a new printer. Yeah. You know, now guys, you talk about the printer died or it needs more ink. In those days they said, oh, the printer died, he had too much ink. All right. Magenta comes from a city in Italy where they invented this beautiful pinkish red dye. That's where it comes from. All right. A lot of different ways of doing this. When I started in the printing world, you would take a photograph and you would scan it, and then we had a big machine that would split it into 4 images. And the 4 images would be combined to make the 4 printing plates. And what you had to do then is you had to make sure that you printed them perfectly on top of each other, or the picture would look very blurry. And that's called registration, close registration or tight registration. And that's a real important thing when you're printing in color. The dot patterns can also muck you up as well. If the dots don't fall on top of each other in a random way, they're going to form patterns. And it's going to start to look real op-ed-ish, op-art. It's going to look like op-art, optical illusions. You're going to start to see all kinds of swirls and patterns forming as well. So the process colors, if you look real close, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of dots. And essentially they're combining red, blue, and yellow. But in this case they have to use black as well. And that's how they do that. And I just remembered that I need to show you something in InDesign before I let you escape, before I forget. So I'm going to have to reopen InDesign here. I'll keep going with the PowerPoint, but there is some, oh, it's open. Okay, excellent. I'll reopen the old brochure. Okay. I need to be a lot smaller than that. Okay, so here's my brochure. Got my text, blah blah blah. I'm not even going to bother to do much with this except just stick it on here. And then I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And you'll notice that there's no bleeds on here. I didn't allow for any bleeds. But now I've decided that I really do want to have bleeds. I need to go over here into layout. Let me put my glasses on. That's what I need to do. need to go under where are my settings here? Here we go. Document setup. All right. Document setup. Now, this is the same as new document. Remember when you set up new document? Document setup is going back to new document and changing the original things. So originally we set it up with a certain number of pages, and we set it up with a certain number of columns. Remember we did all that? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a bleed to this thing. And I'm just going to make it a 2 pica bleed all the way around. And now you can you see the red line that just showed up over here? Everybody see that? That's the bleed. Okay? So now I can take this image and I can move it up to the bleed here. And now, if I click on this one, the preview screen, this is what it'll actually look like on the page. All right? This is what it looks like, including the whole pasteboard, and this is what it looks like on the page. Now, when I go to print this thing, when I go under Print, File, Print, come on, baby. Come on, come to Papa. It's coming. It's frozen. Shall we have frozen dessert? I don't know what's going on. You think that's it?
Yeah, I did it today.
Yeah, you printed today? Okay. All right. Well then, wait, is it going to work now? I'm not getting the print screen. All right. I don't want to waste any time with this. I'm going to go back to my visuals and color. Color palette schemes. Okay. Is it still not printing, huh? All right, so let's talk a little bit about picking colors. All right, complementary colors. The color wheel, I showed you the color wheel. Colors that are 180 degrees apart are called complementary with an E. Complementary with an E. It's not an I, it's an E. And so if you start on one side of the color wheel with yellow, and you go right through the middle, you'll come out on the other side with purple. And that's what's going on right over here. All right? As you go through the middle, you get a whole bunch of muddled colors that is sort of a mixture of the two. And these are often referred to as neutral colors. But whenever you go from one side of the color wheel to the other, you wind up with some very powerful contrast. And that may be something that's helpful, or it may be something that just drives people nuts. So, for example, looking at these two boxes, if you stare at them long enough, all kinds of strange things will happen to your eyes. Okay, which box looks bigger? Which box looks bolder? What's happening? You see changes? No? Nothing? Okay. That's unusual. Everybody get your eyes checked. All right. All right, so you mix the complements. If you mix them together, you're going to wind up with these neutrals in the middle. And that may give you a third color. You can use that as a third color. It's going to give you, it may minimize the amount of contrast and conflict. But you look, if you just got these two colors, you have a whole bunch of other colors that go between. These are percentages of mixes. All right? And so you might want to use this very, very powerful yellow with a more neutral secondary color. You can try that. That might work well. It doesn't, but PowerPoint doesn't do a great job with these things. All right? Generally speaking, when an artist does a piece of work, they stick with a fairly limited palette of colors. Just because the computer can create 256 million colors doesn't mean that you need to use them all. So, limited palettes, you'll find all different varieties. Here's a warm palette. All right? We have a warm golden color, and then we've got a brighter yellow, a darker red, and an orange. And these four colors could work together. All right? Contrast, yes, light and dark. Very, very hot, much cooler, sort of medium. So you can find these, you can look them up online. Just look up color palettes for the kind of effect that you're trying to create. Here are some more. All right? With these pastels, yes, baby, baby. It kind of screams little kid, doesn't it? Nursery kind of thing. Sand, this is sort of maybe a tropical look. Maybe you're doing something like that. Telecom, it's got gray and it's got some colors. It's fairly serious, right? And this one, Big Biz, dark blue is a symbol of business. It's something that's often used in the business world. All right? So scheme one, black plus a color. This is your spot color. And so, for example, I've got this in black, and then this is black about 80%, black 40%, and then I've got a blue. And I'm able to actually create a whole bunch of different colors doing it this way. I can also take a single color, and you remember about shades and tints? So shade is mixing the color with black, tints is mixing the color with white. So here I've got a blue. I think this is my original blue. Here's black. Here's blue with whites added to it. Here's blue with grays added to it. Or, yeah, I think it's grays added to it. You can also take one signal segment of the color wheel and use those colors together. If they're too close, there's going to be no contrast and you defeat the whole purpose. It's kind of like picking Book Antiqua and Palatino. They look too much alike. It's like picking Arial and Helvetica. They look too much alike. The same deal here. You don't want them to look too similar. When I add a dominant color, that adds a lot more contrast, right? But again, all of these came from the same corner of the color wheel. 5 colors with complementaries. Right? Interesting color combinations. Now, this is called a triad. And it involves an original hue, and then you go across the color wheel 180 degrees, and you get the other complementary color. And then, instead of going 180, you go 200 that way, and you go 160 this way. And by changing these dimensions, you wind up with what they call a triad. All right? Plus or minus 20 degrees. I sort of fudged it a little bit, but that's close enough. Again, this kind of combination will work. A bunch of other palettes that you could try out. All right? Different color combinations. What's hot right now? The big color combination that I see just about everywhere right now is kind of a blue jeans blue and orange. And now that I told you about it, you're going to see it everywhere. Yes, walk out of the building, just watch the buses driving by and look at the advertising on the sides of the buses. Right? Very, very popular. For the past 10 years, unbelievable numbers of shades of green have been used, promoting, guess what? Green. It's green. Look at us, we're green. All right. So there are a lot of fads, there are a lot of fashions with these things. There are many times when a class comes in and I can immediately tell when they got their clothing, when they bought it, and almost where they got it as well. Okay? Your long sleeve t-shirt in dark red, probably last winter. Maybe JCPenney? Nordstrom's, probably a JCPenney. Okay? That one's a mystery. Oh, it's a logo shirt. I can't help it. This one, I saw this one at Sears. Got it. It's Not serious? You got a Boston store? Oh, wow. Okay. Nice shirt. Odd colors. Very strange. Ah, Katie's top. Purple and pink. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. But last year. Yeah, good store. That color, that was a really hot color last winter, Christmas time. Was that a Christmas present? 5 years ago, you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. There was another color that they had last year called shopping bag that looked similar. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, so let's see if any of my links work. No, of course not. How about this one? Sometimes they work. You never know. Okay, that one didn't work either. All right, but there are a variety of different places where you can find these things. Shall we go back and see what happened with, here we go. So we've got our print menu. Now, if we go over here under marks and bleed, okay, this is a miniature of what it's going to look like. Can you see the bleed line over there? Remember I added a bleed to this? Okay, so if you go over here under bleed marks, it will show the printer where to trim the page. And now it's going to print smaller than 8.5 by 11 because it's imaginary we're trimming it down, but this will show you where the trim marks were. All right. You can also put in crop marks if you have a reason to have the thing cropped, and registration marks and color bars. You can click all of this stuff if you want and try it once and see what happens. If you use a color printer, you'll wind up with an incredible amount of information all around the image. If you're printing in black and white, you won't see all that stuff. But you should try it at least once just to see what happens. And here you can use the document bleed settings, or at this point you can actually change the bleed settings. When I tried this with that newsletter that I've been working on and I sent it to the printer, American Printing, I got yelled at. Don't change them, leave them the way they are. Okay, that's fine. Right. Other things that you can change in terms of the output, if you know what you're doing, you can change these things. If it's for the screen, it's going to be RGB. All right. It could be if all the text is black, if it's just a black and white image, click this button. But if you're using a spot color, don't click that button. You'll mess the whole thing up. Color management, you can take a shot at this if you want to change it, but for the most part, the defaults will work. Since your printers aren't calibrated and your computer isn't calibrated and your monitor isn't calibrated, it doesn't really matter too much. Whatever comes out, comes out. And you get to explain in your memo, Professor Zwickel, that's not the blue that I wanted. I had this beautiful sea blue that I picked, and it came up with this greenish turquoise thing that I hate. Okay, I'll understand, because I know your printers aren't calibrated. Just tell me what you were trying to do. If you're not sure what you've done, you can go under Summary, and you'll get a huge amount of information about choices that you didn't even know you were making. All right? It's there for you if you want it. But all you really need is this general page and then the marks and bleed, if you want to try that. Okay? So that's where we are with that. All right. Good luck on the assignment. Do the best you can. Explain to me in the memo what you tried to do, and please don't forget the spec sheets. Okay? If you did the body text, all Minion Pro, 10 point on 14, tell me that. Okay? If you decide, if your spot color, the one you picked is blue 300, that's great. That's a wonderful color. I've got two articles to show you very, very quickly. The first one, this is from a few years back. We had the NCAA tournament here in Madison. They dressed up the Kohl Center and they painted everything PMS blue 300 because that's the NCAA color. And that's what they had to have. right? And then here's a story about a few years ago, and you will still see people walking around wearing this, what is it called, Blue Iris? This color was so popular, everybody was buying this color. You just saw it all over the place. You'll find stuff everywhere you look. You'll find articles about color and how people are using color. What do you think of that dress? Put your tongue back in your mouth. Isn't that something? Beautiful colors, beautiful colors. But you look through these things and you can pick out what colors people have been wearing. This is from 2012. I'm gonna find that. Is this the color? What was it before you washed it a few times?
I think this is it.
Was it more green or was it?
No,
Was it
it's
sand color? Okay, I don't remember that sand color at all. Okay.
fashion forward. I
Yeah, well, right after the Iraq War started, khaki became really popular. All kinds of military colors, olive green, khaki. Well, I mean, that's the way the world goes. And then here in Wisconsin, it's always, camouflage is always appropriate, right? Or blaze orange. All right, I'll see you on Thursday. If you get stuck, send me an email. If I get the email and can read the email, I'll respond. Oh, but can I have my Crayolas back?